Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I get a lot of questions about my right hand technique that I like to use in my songs. So I figured I would break down two of them. One is with a pick, and then the other one is a rasgueado. I'm going to break down how I like to apply it to the electric guitar. And, you know, there's many ways to approach this. Many artists play it differently than I would. However, I'm going to explain the way that I like to use it in my songs. And the tuning's going to be from low to high, C, G, C, F, A, D. That's going to be drop C tuning. And this can be applied to any tuning you like though, so don't be discouraged if you don't have a drop C guitar. Alright, let's get into it. So the first example is going to sound like this. So it's going to be very important that you have to understand that your right hand has to be super loose. And the question I get is, you know, what's the motion supposed to look like? There's not one particular motion, however, the one I like to use is almost like you're putting out like a match, like you're flicking your hand. You see how it's almost like it's flicking in a way. So rather than you're trying to control every movement by, you know, straining and like using your muscles, you're kind of just putting it out. And you're not using a lot of energy to really kind of get that speed up there. So what you're going to do is basically have your arm anchored at the top right here and have this just dangling down like that. And from here you can be very loose and you have access to the higher strings and the lower strings. What I like to do is listen to drum beats or drum fills, kind of like this, and then mimic it on the guitar, with this being like the kick drum and this being the snare, or hi-hats and snare, or whatever you really like, but you can differentiate the sounds. Now let's talk about the muting. That's going to be really important to get the sound that pretty much everyone's looking for. There's two ways to mute, with your right and your left hand. So I would recommend when you're doing chords and whatnot, you can lift up and find a nice spot that doesn't have any ringing out over it. So right there is a pretty good spot. And it's already pretty muted, but let's say you want ultra muted. We can use our right hand to also mute here and mute here, and you get. So here's a little exercise that you can mess around with. It's just going to be two chords, and you're going to be focusing on your right hand. We're going to do just a minor chord. So it's going to be 5, 7, 7, 6, 5. Pretty much barred with your index. I'm just going to keep the same shape and move it up to the 10th fret. Now, like I was mentioning earlier, if you're in a different tuning, that's totally cool. As long as you use these frets, you'll be fine. And then we'll add chords to that exercise. Alright, so the next technique I'm going to go over is the rasgueado technique. And I picked this up from Grisha Gorachev, who came to my school when I was in college, and he was helping me with like flamenco playing, and he was the best player I've ever witnessed in front of me. But that's where I got the inspiration to do this, and I pretty much just learned how to try my best to apply it to an electric guitar, which is actually pretty hard because there's certain aspects of it that just don't feel the same as a classical guitar. That's one thing I'm still working on, but I thought it'd be fun to share with you guys anyway. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to go over is how I like to do it. And it's basically shooting off each individual finger one at a time, like that. I can't remember exactly who I picked this up from, but it was like shooting off marbles. So like, you know, when you shoot off a marble, you kind of flick it in a way. So you kind of have to do that with these. And eventually you can kind of break your thumb out, which is how I like to do it. And then my fingers eventually kind of go around like that. And you want to make sure they're individually spaced. So not like that. You're not just dragging them across the strings. The way I like to do is kind of have my thumb out a little bit. So sometimes I'll even have it resting on this string. So that way I can kind of come back down and slap. And you can also use it to just chords in general. So here's an example that you can practice, and it's going to be the same chords that we used in the last example. So what we're going to do is have a fist, and then shoot out your index and bring that back in. Fire off pinky, ring, middle, index, and then scoot back up with your index. So yeah, that's my 2 techniques that I like to use when I'm doing fast strumming patterns. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it below and I'll try and get to all of you. But until next time, I'll see ya.